Yeah.
Okay, hi everybody. It's really an honor to be here today. I want to thank you all students for waking up early to be here and all the caregivers who helped you get here today. Thank you to our coordinators, Anna and Asha and all my fellow speakers. My name is Maureen Kemei. I am a quality and reliability engineer at Intel. And today I'm so excited to share with you my journey in my career, how I got to where I am today. I grew up in Kenya. My family is all in Kenya, so I'm really excited to be talking with you. On the screen is actually a picture of my family. This is my older brother, my dad, my younger sister, my mom, and this is me and my younger brother. This was in 2010. And growing up, I loved learning. And for my primary education, I went to Moi Forces Academy in Nairobi, Kenya. And on the screen, you'll see a picture of a classroom. And this was my classroom when I was in elementary school. I wore the same uniform. And in 2011, I had the wonderful opportunity to go back to my school and share with the students about interesting materials and my journey up to where I am today. And so your classrooms might look very similar, and my encouragement to you is that you can get to your goals. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. I just went to a very similar classroom like you are going to today. Then after that, I went to secondary school in Precious Blood Girls High School in Riruta. And when I was here, one of the students who was in the school before me had gone to the USA to study at Yale University. She came back and she shared her story of how she applied for college, how she got to go and study in the US. And this was my very first time learning about the process. And it was very important for me to learn what would be required. And it really helped me prepare for applications. So after high school, I came to the US, to Massachusetts, where I studied physics. And then after that, I also studied material science in graduate school at the University of California in Santa Barbara. Growing up, my main challenge was always the lack of finances to support my education. So I remember in primary school, we would get sent home all the time because, we didn't have our fees paid. And many times, you'd go home and then your parents would raise a little bit of money and then you'd pay a little bit and keep going. And that's how I finished my primary school. And this problem is not unique to me. And if you look at low-income countries, for example, Kenya, a lot of students, up to 70%, might not have the opportunity to get primary level education. But my encouragement to you is that even when you have challenges, it's possible to overcome. And let me give you an example from my life. So when I went to high school, it was a boarding school and the fees were much higher than primary school and my family just couldn't make it. My mother pleaded with the principal to allow me to join the list of students on the school bursary, meaning that we would get a portion of our fees paid by the school. But in return, during the holidays when my friends went home to be with their families, I had to stay and work in the school for 1 to 2 weeks. It was just a requirement if you got the support from the school that you would stay and help. And what we would do is clean the floors and wax them and polish them, prepare them for the next school term. And it was challenging, and still my knees hurt to today because we would kneel and just cover the whole school with just very few students. But it was a worthy sacrifice because that's how I finished high school and went on to college. And I'm just sharing to encourage you that even if you're going through any challenge, that just don't be discouraged. It's possible to still pursue your dreams. The people who've inspired me have been my parents and my teachers. My parents never gave up, even though if you look at what we had as a family, you couldn't say we would all finish our education, but we would not have clothes. You wouldn't get clothes every year, but you would go to school. They prioritized our school. I saw them sacrificing for us. They're my inspiration. My teachers were so helpful. Let me give you an example. When I was in primary school, I was registered to do the national exams at Moi Forces Academy in Nairobi. But then in the middle of my last year, my family had to move from Nairobi very quickly. And I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have done the national exams that determine that you can go to secondary school. But thankfully, one of my teachers opened their doors to me, and that allowed me to complete my exams and eventually join high school. Just another example of getting support from your mentors. So today I am an engineer at Intel, and at Intel we manufacture the brains of the computer. The microprocessors we make end up looking in a package similar to this, and they're in laptops, they're in cars, they're in healthcare devices, they're in every facet of life. And we make them in very large factories that are extra clean because the features of the microprocessors are so small. Imagine something smaller than the width of your hair. So we really have to be careful to make sure that we have the cleanest environment to make the chips. And how we make them? Well, the process starts with sand, which is silicon oxide, and then it's purified to make silicon cylinders called ingots. So imagine silicon in a big cylinder, and then we slice it to make wafers. And then now I'd like you to imagine that you want to build a house. You would start with stones, connect the stones with cement, and then where you want to place a window, you would put wood, a frame of wood, and maybe glass so that you can see through, and eventually a roof. So you put together different materials, connecting them in such a way that you can make a strong house. Very similarly at Intel, we start with the silicon, which is the base, and then we build many circuits on top of it, connecting the circuits carefully to achieve the functionality that is needed to make a good processor for a computer. We use many materials. You may have seen the periodic table in your classes. We use many, many materials, connecting them well to achieve the intended functionality. And then at the very end of that process, we test them. We make sure that these processes are going to function as we expect them to, and for the period of time that is required for several years. So eventually, what is sold from Intel looks like the package you see on the screen. And specifically at Intel, I have worked in the factories making the chips. And now as a quality reliability engineer, I write software that looks at the electrical data from all the chips and makes sure that the chips are running at the right speeds, they're working reliably in the right power range, and they're going to work for the time that we guarantee that they're going to work. And an education in science, technology, engineering, and math is so helpful, and it opens a world of opportunities. You can envision becoming a computer programmer or a mathematician, working in the lab as a material scientist, or working in healthcare, or being an electrical engineer. The possibilities are endless. And the other thing I love about STEM is that it really teaches you how to think critically. And it's so important to be able to think about how you're moving through life, you know, to successfully get through a day. You have to make so many decisions, and a STEM background really helps with building a good critical thought process. So as I conclude, my encouragement for you is that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Imagine me as a student at Moy Forces Academy Primary School, dreaming of becoming an engineer. There was that day, and then there was high school, there was college, and then looking for an opportunity to work. It didn't happen all in one day. It just takes time. So try new things, try difficult things, and dream. When you have an opportunity to study or do a job, be excellent, because that opens opportunities. And I also hope that you can have mentors to help you move towards your goals. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to talk today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Maureen. So inspiring story. Let's see if our students have any questions. Any questions, students?
No questions for now.
Stop sharing the screen. So any questions for our speaker today? I'm sure you have some questions. I'm sure you want to ask some questions.
Yay! Say something.
Maybe they can think about the questions, and maybe teachers can ask one question. I'm sure you have one question for our speaker. All right. Why did you choose material science?
That's a good question. So my undergraduate education was in physics, and while I was in my undergraduate, I did a few internships. Internships are just small projects where you can learn about a new area. And the areas that really interested me were in the interface, were between physics and material science. So material science, we study how can I understand this material, or how can I engineer its properties to get new functionality. So through my internships, what really piqued my interest, or what I was interested in, was just how to make materials very functional. And also, let me give you a good example. So imagine if you have steel, if you have just steel and it's all flat, if you measure the strength of it, it's going to be lower than if you curve it around like a roof, like a corrugated roof. You can increase its strength. So I really liked that you can play around with material structure, chemistry, and really get new functionalities. That's why I studied material science.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question, another question here. When did you know your career would be in IT?
When did I know my career would be in?
IT, in technology.
So as a child, I was very curious about things. One of the things I was so curious about is how you turn on the light and then it turns on. I just wanted to understand, how does that happen? And so I realized that I would learn that in engineering. And that's how I started. So I knew I wanted to understand how things work, things like electricity. And in my undergraduate school, they did not have engineering. So the closest thing I could study was physics. And thankfully, through physics, I really learned about how electricity works. So to keep it brief, I just was curious about how things work, and the things that I was most interested in was in engineering. I wasn't so sure I was going to be a material scientist or, material physicist. It could have gone either way. It's just that through my education and research, I ended up in that path. But I was very curious about how things work, and I knew I did not want to become a doctor because I was afraid of blood. So that's why.
Thank you so much. So I think that's a great advice. Stay curious. I believe there's one more question. Is there one more question for our speaker? I think it's if you could unmute, I think the microphone is on. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, can you please repeat?
Okay. My name is Rosila, and I'm completing my form for this year, and I've not yet done physics. And my question is that, can someone be an ICT engineer if you've not pursued physics in high school level?
Can someone become an electrical engineer without studying physics? Is that the question?
An ICT engineer.
Ah,
a course in technology.
Without doing physics?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Because, for example, without doing physics in high school, I think that's fine as long as you meet the criteria for a specific ICT program. I don't think physics is a requirement. And even if you were to go to college, like the school I went to, they were not looking that I had a physics background in my high school. I could continue to study physics or computer science or anything in college to meet the course requirements of the degree I was studying. So my answer is yes. You'd have to look at the specific requirements of a course you're applying for or a college to just make sure that's true. I just don't think not having physics in your high school should prevent you from studying ICT in college. But I actually want to welcome the other speakers if there's thoughts on that one. Or, yeah.
So,
Any suggestions?
Yeah, I think, you definitely, if you don't do physics in high school, I think it's still okay because you'll have opportunities, just like Maureen was saying, you'll have opportunities in college to actually take those classes. So if you are interested in becoming an engineer, don't let the fact that you haven't taken a physics class in high school stop you from pursuing that dream.
Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. I think the best interest of time, we're just going to continue the Q&A session towards the end of the session today. Thank you so much. And students, can we give a big round of applause for our speaker today? And we appreciate a lot We love the message. Thank you so much. Our second speaker today, let me share my screen. So our second speaker today is Emil Davies. He's an electrical engineer at Intel, and he has been at Intel for many, many years. He's also very passionate about education and about sharing his knowledge and empowering the next generation. So I would like to invite Emil to please share your story and inspire our students. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anna. I really appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Thank you.
So can you guys see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, as Anna said, my name is Emil Davies. I also work at Intel. And I work there as an analog engineer, which is a type of electrical engineer. And specifically, I work in the area of technology development, and all that simply means that we actually look at new ideas and see how we can incorporate them into products to help make the products better. So one of the things that people usually ask is, what's an engineer? Or who is an engineer? And I don't know how many of you guys know people that are engineers. Well, at least today you've met like a few people that are engineers, but you know, to simply put it, an engineer is just somebody who uses their knowledge of math and science to solve problems in unique ways. And these ways they usually solve them are what we refer to as technologies. So technology is just a big way to say it's a specialized solution for a problem. And engineers fall into various broad disciplines or categories. So for example, you have civil engineers, which are the ones, and on the civil engineers, you have structural engineers that do buildings, you have road engineers, you have mechanical engineers, which is another large specialty, and you have subspecialties in there. So is chemical engineers, where as well, where you have specialties in material science as well. And then there are biomedical engineers, which pretty much just use their knowledge of engineering and science and apply it to solve medical problems. And of course, the electrical engineers, which is like a huge field, because almost everything we use nowadays runs on some form of electricity or power. So what do I currently do? So as an engineer, I work on electrical systems, and the solutions that I develop as part of the work I do is primarily focused on helping computer systems to run faster and more efficiently. And you might ask, well, what is a computer anyway? Well, the specific area of a computer that I work on is known as the CPU. So an average computer can be considered, you can visualize it like a human body, where you have your brain that controls everything else that goes on with your body. So either consciously or subconsciously, it controls it. So that's pretty much what a CPU is. The CPU pretty much directs all the traffic that goes on in a computer. You have the storage area, which is usually referred to RAM. So pretty much you can consider that as the area where information is kept temporarily. So say, for example, you're studying for your test, right? The books that you're using, you'd pretty much put that information within the closest reach of yourself as possible, say on the table right next to you. So that would be sort of the memory. So when the CPU actually has a lot of information that it needs relatively fast access to, it will take that information and preload it in the memory of the system so it can get it really fast. However, if it has like a lot of information that it wants to store permanently, it will send it to something known as the hard drive in the computer, where information can be stored for a long time and it can be retrieved at any time. So the challenge with the memory is once you turn off the computer, it loses everything that's in there. But on the hard drive, you can store it permanently. However, reaching that information takes a long time. So that's the trade-off that you have between the two systems. Well, what are these CPUs present in? As you can see on the right, I have like a host of different computing systems. So some of them are small as a USB memory stick, and you can have some of them that can be as large as a football field. Each one of these guys has a CPU inside that's designed for it. So some of them are much smaller than others. Some of them are more power hungry than others, but they all perform similar tasks, although to different extents. So why can you find microprocessors in some of the general things that you use every day? Well, they can be found everywhere. So they're in phones, they're in tablets, they're in watches. And the thing about it is, like, each one of these ones have different size microprocessors that have different abilities. So the type of processor that you would need in a watch that does very little is totally different from what you would need, say, on a tablet, where you do a lot more with it. They can also be found in bigger systems, such as laptop computers and gaming consoles. And in some cases, you can even have multiples of them. So for example, in supercomputers, you can actually have thousands of these microprocessors pretty much working in collaboration with each other like an army to accomplish a task. So some of you guys might ask, well, how did you get here? Well, just a quick background on myself. I actually grew up, I was born in Sierra Leone in West Africa. I grew up in the capital, Freetown. And as a kid, I was always very curious and I wanted to explore everything around me. You know, from a really young age, I always used to ask questions. Well, how do things work? You know, and this kind of piqued my curiosity very early, especially, well, the few toys I ever had, you know, especially the ones that use electricity that had lights on it. I always used to wonder how they worked. And needless to say, I usually ended up taking them apart and couldn't put them together. And that was the end for a lot of them. So very early, I recognized that the way my style of learning did not really conform to how most people learn. For example, I was really bad when it came to memorization. So I couldn't memorize timetables, and that was something they wanted us to do, and it was pretty difficult to me. But I noticed that you could find alternative approaches to accomplish this task. So for the times table, for example, I realized that all you had in multiplication tables were just like a series of additions. And I was very comfortable with doing additions. So instead of memorizing the times table, when they ask me, I can add up the numbers really fast and come up with the answer. That was my way around it. I became interested in science because of some interesting teachers I had in secondary school. Because in primary school, yeah, I was curious, but I didn't really know much about science. It wasn't really like something I was super interested in. But I had a few teachers in secondary school that broke down the topic of science into much simpler terms that I could understand. And that way, it enabled me to see everything that was going on around me as science. So just even walking down the road, you know, that was physics right there. And just the way certain things flow. Well, why does water flow different from oil? That was also physics there, and some amount of chemistry. So that piqued my curiosity, and it brought me back to some of the questions I had in my earlier years which was how electricity really worked. And that what encouraged me to look at electrical engineering as a career. Initially, I was not really sure what it was all about. But because of the love that these teachers instilled in me for science, combined with my curiosity, and how they could use science to explain things that was going on around, I decided I was going to look at becoming an engineer. I actually went to school at the University of Minnesota, and that was like a big experience for me, coming from West Africa, where it was really warm and humid, to a place where we were pretty much walking on ice. They had ice like 6 months a year on the ground. That was quite an experience for me. And coming to college, I found myself in this unique situation where before I actually came to college, I had never really used a computer before. I think the first time I ever touched a computer was probably like 2 months before I started college. And all of a sudden I found myself in electrical engineering, where primarily the whole thing that we did, the thing that we dealt with most of the time was computers. So it was a bit of a transition. I actually had to learn new things, including how to use a computer, while at the same time, trying to take classes where I needed computers to do the basic assignments or the basic work that I needed to do. So, but I did not let that discourage me. Whenever I had the opportunity, I was always willing to learn something new. And this led me to seek some opportunities when I was in undergrad, specifically the whole idea of research and development. I had a few classes where the teachers were researchers. So after these classes, I'll go to the teachers, their office hours, and I used to ask a lot of questions. And a few of them mentioned to me, well, oh yeah, they have these positions. It's usually for graduate students, but they usually take a few undergrads a year to help them work in their labs. I had no idea what this was all about, but I jumped at the opportunity because I always wanted to learn new things. So you guys can see a picture here of the team I actually worked with. The lady in the red was my professor, the principal researcher. And I ended up working with her, learning how to manufacture chips that a previous speaker was talking about. So I started this as an undergrad. So by the time I was actually graduating from undergrad, I had enough knowledge to perform all the basic operations required for manufacturing a chip. So I decided to pursue further studies as a graduate student in this particular area. So how has being an engineer changed my life? Actually, it has given me like a lot of opportunities. So it's given me opportunities to work with some of the latest cutting edge technology in the world. It's also given me an opportunity to solve problems that at first glance would appear insurmountable. And This has happened with a group of people from different backgrounds, different specialties from all around the world. And it has also given me like an opportunity to travel a lot. These are some of the pictures from places I've traveled to for work. Some of these are actually from Japan, where I did like a project building some specialty equipment. So just some quick takeaways before I end. I always want you guys to see every opportunity as every experience you get as a learning opportunity. It does not really matter if you're successful the first time, you know, because even when you fail, you just learn something new, and that something new that you learned is what does not work. So you know that next time you won't repeat that. So always be open to learning something new and never stop asking questions. And I'll leave you with whenever you think about something being too hard or impossible to do, be it at school, you know, whatever subjects that you're dealing with, where the concept just seems really, really hard. Just think about the saying from Nelson Mandela, where he said that things always seem impossible. Things always seem impossible until you get them done. So thank you guys for listening. I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Emil. Thank you so much. So inspiring. I'm sure our students are inspired. I see some smiley faces there. So any questions for our speaker today? So in the chat, there's a question: what is needed to make a chip and how is it made?
Yeah, well, as a previous speaker mentioned, the fundamental thing that's needed to make a chip is actually sand, right? And once you have the sand, you start building on it as you would build a house. You start constructing things layer by layer. So the fundamental thing that all chips are based on are known as transistors. So these are just devices that are switches that you can turn on and off using electricity. And that's what the fundamental thing in a chip is. So you can take a whole bunch of these devices and put them together in circuits to form whatever, to accomplish whatever functionality that you want. As a matter of fact, some of the latest technology, latest processes that we have for on the chips, on the chips that are available, actually have billions and billions of those devices in just one small chip that you can hold probably in your hand or like a few fingers. So that just gives you an idea of how small they are.
Wonderful, thank you. How long did you study in college?
Well, I actually spent 7 years. So I spent 4.5 years in my undergrad, and I also spent another 2.5 years in my master's program.
Thank you so much. And would you like to share something about your typical day? How is your typical day?
Yeah, my typical day is can be very exciting. So it can be standard or it can be very exciting. So for one, since I work in the area of technology development, I deal with like a whole host of problems. So these include problems that are related to tasks as abstract as university research, where we're asking abstract question about, okay, well, is this even possible? Would something really work? What if we try this strange idea? Is it possible to get this to physically accomplish what we think it can accomplish, all the way to problems where, well, we have something that's at a customer, it is not working. Can we figure out, we need an answer in the next day. Can we figure out why their stuff is not working? So it does encompass like a wide range of solutions. And that's one of the nice things about technology development, because you're not doing one thing over and over and over again. You can have like a range of problems. So some that are very close to the customer, but some that are so far away from them.
Yes, very exciting. Every day is exciting. Thank you, Emil. There's one more question and then we can go to the next speaker. So the question is, what kind of challenges did you encounter in your journey? And how did you join Intel?
Well, my journey as an engineer, I think one of the biggest challenges for me when that I encountered was when I actually got introduced initially to this idea of science and technology, just not being able to connect, because I've always been somebody that was like hands-on. I like to play around with things, to break stuff, fix stuff. So just not being able to connect what was being taught in class with how these things can be used practically was a big challenge for me, because I always used to ask myself, well, if I can use this stuff, why do I need to learn it anyway? But once I got to understand the fundamental of how science is just an explanation of what goes on every day, then everything came alive for me. So everywhere I was going, everything I was seeing, I could actually see the science behind it. And that's really what got me excited in engineering and science.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Emil. I think such an inspiring story, and I'm sure all of us can connect, all the students can connect to many things that you shared, and I'm sure they are inspired by your story. Thank you so much, Emil. And students, let's give a big round of applause to our speaker. I'm sure more questions are there. Towards the end of the session, we can cover the session questions. So we have couple more speakers today. Our next speaker is Ms. Abigail Agway. Abigail is an engineer at Intel. She's been at Intel for nearly 10 years, and she is very passionate about engineering, very passionate about giving back to the community, and also very passionate about sharing her story and inspiring students like you all. So Abigail, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to invite you to share your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Anna, and also like to thank the other speakers, two speakers that went before me. I'm really excited to be sharing my story with you today, and thank you so much for being up so early in the morning to hear more about STEM and about how we became engineers. So I am going to share with you a little bit about my background and where I'm from. So I am also from Africa, and I'm from a country that's on the from West Africa. I'm from Nigeria, which is a country over here. And that was where I was born, and that's where I'm originally from. Because of my parents' job, I got to do some traveling. So when I was pretty young, my parents actually, we moved to the United Kingdom, which is an island basically here in Europe. And we lived for a while in Wales, and then we lived in England for a while. And that was where my very first school I went to was there. And it was very different. When I moved out there, it was very different from what I was used to back in Nigeria. I also developed quite a bit of curiosity in my younger days. I would ask a lot of questions. I always wanted to know how things worked. One of the things I wanted to do was to take apart our television to figure out how it worked. I just really had an interest in knowing how ideas that I was learning in school, how they tied in, but I was also just curious about the things around me and how they actually got to work on a day-to-day basis, especially anything that was technology based. So I moved back to Nigeria, and that's where I went to grade school. And I actually really enjoyed learning when I was in grade school. And this is a picture of when I was in grade school. I'm on the right, and then my older sister is over here on the left, and then this is my cousin. And this is the school uniform that we got to wear, and we got to go to school. And I really enjoyed learning some of the new concepts. And I really enjoyed it when I was able to, not necessarily that things came easily to me, but I really enjoyed it when I took the time to try to put ideas together and figure out how things that I was learning kind of all came together. And I remember it was around this age, I noticed that people would ask me, they'd ask me how school was, but then they would also ask me the question, what did I want to become when I grew up? And that always kind of got me thinking, okay, what do I want to do? And so one of the things my mother had told me is, think about the things you're interested in when you're trying to think about what you want to be when you grow up, because you want to do something that you're interested in. You want to do something that you find that you're passionate about. And so I started to think about the things I liked to do. I really liked concepts things that had to do with designing. I really liked things that had to do with problem solving. And so so I started to learn more about the different types of jobs that were out there. And I learned about things like, architecture, and that sounded interesting to me. I learned a little bit more about what doctors do. That didn't sound as interesting to me because, again, I didn't really think I would be able to work I didn't really like the sight of blood, and I didn't really think I would work well if I had to deal with people who were sick. I would probably just feel so sad and sorry for them. So then I learned about this thing called engineering as well. And my uncle was an engineer. And so I started to learn a little bit more about what engineers actually did. And that sounded, I'm like, wow, engineers design things like Emil talked about, the previous speaker. He had said, basically, engineers are taking concepts from mathematics and science and building new technologies. They're coming up with new ideas to help solve problems that we have today. And so that just sounded really interesting to me, but architecture also sounded interesting to me. So I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to be when I was that young. But when I got into high school, which I went to high school in a country called Zimbabwe. Again, I moved because of my parents' job. And it was there that I decided that I actually did want to become an engineer. And this is just a picture of me and my friends when I was in high school. I'm over here on the lower left of the picture. And that's when I said, I think I want to become an engineer. And I thought to myself, because I started to think, okay, if I want to become an engineer, that means I have to go to university and learn about how to become an engineer. And so I started to think about, where do I want to go to school? And I started to look at different places that I could go to school. And I was really interested in going to school in the US. I thought that it would be a good place to actually learn a lot about engineering because a lot of technology came from the US. I didn't want to go anywhere that was cold though. I just remember when I was younger and we were in England, it would be cold. Sometimes it would snow and it would rain and it would be gray. And I wanted somewhere where it was still warm, similar to the experience I had in Nigeria and Zimbabwe. I wanted somewhere that was warm. So I looked at a bunch of different universities. And there was a university in Arizona, which is where I live in Arizona today. It was called the University of Arizona. And the university had a good engineering program. And so that's where I applied. And that's where I actually just ended up going. Arizona is in the southwest of the United States. And that's where I went to college. And I actually studied there in the College of Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering. I was a mechanical engineer. Engineering was what I ended up studying. And I really enjoyed the program that I was in. It was challenging to begin with, but what really helped me was that ongoing curiosity and a passion and a perseverance to solve problems. And one of the things I really enjoyed that I got to do was work in teams, especially for my senior design project, which we had to design something and build a prototype and then present our design. And what I liked about it was I got to work with different other students that were studying different types of engineering. And we got to work together to actually optimize a solution to a problem. And so this really, I found, was one of the best parts of engineering, which I still really enjoy today, is being able to work as a team. You might have heard the saying, 2 heads are better than 1. And so that's really what comes out in the beauty of engineering and teamwork is the problems that we're trying to solve today or the technology we're trying to build is actually pretty complicated. And you can't just have one person working on it. You need a whole team of people to come up with different ideas and to work together. And so that's one of the things I really enjoyed. And so I decided after I had graduated with my undergrad in mechanical engineering that I wanted to stay on and get an advanced degree. And so I actually ended up getting a master's and a PhD in mechanical engineering. And I really enjoyed it because I got to do a lot research in a lot of different fields. One of the research projects I got to work on was looking at the material that goes into airplanes called composite materials. And these composite materials essentially, the way they're designed is that they're a mixture of different types of materials. And the ones I was looking at were actually woven together. And so that weave actually makes the material, gives the material extra strength, but the material is very light. And so it works really well for an airplane because you want an airplane to be light, but you want it also to be very strong. And so I got to do research on those types of composite materials. I also got to do research in artificial heart valves. And so all that is your heart is that organ in your body that pumps blood around your body. So that organ is just, if you think about it, it's just a pump. And so in certain cases, there are valves in your heart. And in certain cases, these valves can stop working correctly. And so what happens is that they end up if it's your valves are not working correctly, one option is to actually get an artificial one and make sure that works correct, is to make sure the blood flowing through your heart and to the rest of your body is going, is pumping correctly. And so I got to actually do research on how to actually improve the designs of these artificial heart valves. And the other thing I got to work on as well, which is really important, is to understand when materials are going to break and to understand what kinds of properties materials have. So I actually got to do some experiments and actually got to do computer simulations and write code to kind of figure out when certain materials were actually going to have a crack forming in them. And so this picture here just shows some of the different materials and this crack forming through it. And it's important for us to know when a material is going to, when there's going to be a crack forming or when it's going to break, so we understand how we can use it in whatever technology we're designing. And so I got to do all sorts of research while I was working on my master's and then working on my PhD as well. And I got to present my work out and I got to travel to a few different places. And so then after that, I joined Intel, and I've been at Intel now for almost 10 years. And I get to work on chips. And I think the previous speakers have talked about the different types of chips and the computers that they go into. So I won't talk to you about that. I do just am showing one of Intel's chips and some of the different types of laptops that they go into. So my first job at Intel, I basically was working in a technology development factory. And what we were doing there was trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to put a process together to manufacture the next generation of Intel chips? So not necessarily the products that we're selling, today, but the products that we're going to be selling in the future. What's the process that we're going to use to put these together? And so I actually got to work in a factory, which was really exciting. We had to wear protective clothing, as these pictures are showing here, and figure out the best way of putting together the chips. Today, what I do is I actually work on, again, I'm working on kind of more of a technology development or research and development to figure out how we're going to put our chips together, the next generation of chips. How are they going to be put together so that they work correctly? And these chips are really small, as you can see, like this is a coin and this is one of Intel's chips. And since they're pretty small, we have to know how to put them together correctly. And so that's what I work on today. And it is very exciting. Again, I work up in a team with a lot of different people, and it's something I really enjoy. So I will just leave you with a few last thoughts or just things, key takeaways. And I think some of the previous speakers have already said this, is be curious. Definitely be curious. Don't be shy about asking questions. Always ask questions. It's better for you to ask questions and learn something new. So with that, I'm going to stop. This has come to the end of my presentation, and I welcome you to ask me whatever questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Abigail. Such an inspiring story. And I'm sure our students have some questions for you. I'm sure they have. Let's see. Thank you so much. I do have a question for you. What challenges did you face when you moved from so many schools and so many places? How did you manage? How did you get through?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is challenging when you move to a new country and you move to a new place, because there's a lot of times there are cultural differences, even if people all speak English, differences with accents and understanding what's acceptable and not. And I found, again, one of the things that really helped me was having my family initially, but then also just not being shy about asking questions if I didn't know what something was, or if I was trying to figure something out, trying to get help if I needed that help. And that was one of the things that really helped me as I moved from different countries and moved to different places. Thanks for that question.
Thank you so much. I think that's very true. We all go through challenging times. We just have to keep going, can't give up. Very nice. Thank you so much, Abigail. Kiddos, can we give a big round of applause to our speaker today? Is it fun being an engineer?
Oh, yes, it's so much fun being an engineer. Because you basically get to design something or build something that never existed before. I think about the chips that we work on at Intel. The chips that are on the market today that I was working on 2 years ago never existed. So I've basically helped, by working on a team, helped to bring something into existence that wasn't there before, that is changing the lives of people, because computers, as we know, are everywhere, and these chips are everywhere. Thanks for that question.
Wonderful question. Yeah, thank you so much. And also solving problems. So design something new and solve problems. Very nice. Thank you so much. And let's give a big round of applause to our speaker. And thank you, Abigail. We really enjoyed listening to you. Thank you for inspiring our students. We have the last speaker for today. I'm going to introduce so Ms. Asha Anyako. I'm sure many of you know her, and she is our last speaker today. She's an engineer at Safaricom, and when she was on Tech Women's program, she connected with Ms. Priyanka and myself, and she was so anxious to bring all kinds of career exploration programs to Kenya and to students in Kenya. So she's very passionate about education, and you guys are very lucky to have her as your mentor and lead. So thank you, Asha, for everything you do. I'd like to welcome you to speak to the students.
Anna, and thank you to the whole team. I know it's late at night in the US, and you decided to sacrifice and join us for today's session. Thank you so much. I missed the introduction. Today we have a Makime Children's Home, and we have Makime students. We also have students from Children's Garden in Kawangware. We have a group from Samburu Girls Foundation, and our friends who are joining us online. The kids that we also learn together.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
No, we are not seeing your screen. No, we're not seeing your screen. Are you sharing?
Yes, let me share. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah. So my name is Asha Makana Panyako. I know many of you know me. I work at Safaricom as a tech lead for data analytics. And this is my same journey. I work at Safaricom in the IT department. I was born and raised in Western Kenya. It's a sugarcane farming community, and then did a bachelor's degree in computer science in computational intelligence from University of Nairobi. I spend my free time volunteering, teaching children how to code in different communities, and spending time with my nieces and nephews. Yeah, and I also like. So today I'm going to take you through computer science. That's what I do. It's the part of the STEM journey, and it's the T in STEM, which means technology. So computer science is learning how computers and programs computers think and how they perform specific tasks. As you can see, I know some of you can see yourself there. We have Kevin, we have Elizabeth, we have Lucy. They're all on this call. We spend some time learning computer science, creating programs using different background. I come from Mumias. As I said, it's a sugarcane farming community. That's a tractor. It's harvesting sugarcane. And I know some of you have used the Mumias sugar. And then this is my family. Those are my nieces and nephews, and my mother and my aunt. And I also do yoga. And when I'm home with them, I take time, do yoga with them, and also go for swimming.
Nice.
So my STEM career, this is my STEM career. When I was a small kid, I wanted to be a doctor, but I was not very sure. And then at one point, I wanted to be an engineer, but I was not again so sure. So when I went to high school, I started studying computer, and I really liked working with computers and creating programs. So I decided I'm going to be a software engineer. And what does a software engineer do? They develop code using different languages, programs for computers that tell computers what to do. In future, I'm studying to become an artificial intelligence engineer so that I can program.
Very cool.
That's an Amazon delivery robot. So in future, then what is coding? What we spend doing on Saturdays, we code, and coding means telling a computer communication. You have to communicate to the different languages such as HTML for creating web apps. Whatever Prosper is doing there, she's trying to draw two big circles, a green one and a blue one, and she's writing it, her code using Java. JavaScript. We usually use a kit called. What I do at Safaricom, I do data analytics, which is part of data science. For data science, helps us use data to predict stuff, classify stuff, and to get patterns. So at Safaricom, we receive of calls, we send a lot of messages home and to friends and going to supermarkets buying things. So what I do, I get all the data. I write programs to get all the data from all the different systems at Safaricom, push them together, and then I come up with graphs and charts, as you can see, that tell my bosses on how we can make more money, how many customers we have, how much we've sold, and how we can improve our business. So that is what I do. And you too can learn computer science and become a data scientist. So my humble advice to you is be disciplined, children. For me, being a disciplined child has really worked well for me. I listen to my elders and they're able to give me curious. As a kid, I always wanted to learn. And if I get any book, I'll try read it of life. And always be ready to learn and always ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Asha. I learned a lot from your presentation. Thank you for inspiring us. Any questions, students, for our speaker today?
Do you have any questions?
What challenges did you have, Asha, going into this kind of a very competitive field?
I think challenges is when I started, I told them I'm going to do computer science, and my father wanted me to be a doctor because they did not understand what computer science is. So I just started learning things on my own.
Very nice.
Learning from friends, and it's a bit, but along the journey, I found people who teach me, who tell me, if you want to pursue this, you can learn this and this and this, but use this direction, and they mentor me. So yes, it was a challenge. We didn't have computers, but I overcame it.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you. And you have so much passion to also share all your learnings with students. So I think that's amazing. I think there's a question on the chat. Do you have a website or a book that for helping children learn IT? Yeah. So I'm sure there is many resources online, but that's one of the programs we want to bring to you all. Hopefully in the next session we can do some coding with the students. So we want to teach you all robotics. We want to teach a lot of coding. We want to teach programs that we do here, a lot of career exploration programs. I'm sure there's a lot of it is available online, but we do bring these programs as well. Hopefully in our next session, we can teach some of the coding sessions. Very nice. A lot of good questions. So I'd like to say a big thank you to all our speakers. Thank you, Asha. And a special thanks to you for taking such a big initiative to organize this event and putting all of us together. And very big thank you to all the staff members of the schools and centers in Kenya who were able to join today. I think one of the reasons when we celebrate National Engineers Week, we also celebrate the teachers and the staff members who make such a big effort to connect students to all the people in these kind of engineering fields. So thank you so much. We really had a wonderful time with you all and enjoyed this evening. So I wanted to see if any of our speakers want to say a few words to say goodbye to all our students here. And we do have a very cool video to show you before we go. But before that, I wanted to see if our speakers have anything to, few words to say to our students. I'm sure, you know, they are so excited to hear from you again. Priyanka, do you want to say something?
Sure, yeah. I'm just so happy to attend this event today. You know, only one thing I want to share with you all. Whatever you decide to do, just try to have fun with it. If you like it, you would want to do it. And you wouldn't want to do it because somebody asked you to do that, or your parents forced you to do that, or because teachers are saying, because you yourself want to do. So you need to start inculcating the habit of liking what you decide to do for a long time. If I want to be an engineer, I would want to be a happy engineer, not a sad engineer who is just, thank God I don't have to do this again, right? I want to do this in the weekend. I want to see the science all around me, think about it because I enjoy it, right? I enjoy being like that. So try to inculcate that habit of enjoying what you decide to do. That is my only advice. You will have a very happy and good life and a healthy life that way.
Thank you. And keep learning and don't give up. Like you heard, all of us have challenges. We all have difficult times, but we just didn't give up. We just, you know, hang in there, ask your teachers for help, find mentors, ask for help, and you will be good. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, all the kids, for joining us. We have a very small video for you guys to enjoy. So let's see if I can pull up that video. All right. So let me see if we can share it. So this, before I share this video, so you all heard about chips that Intel makes. So one of those chips is in the brain of this robot, and the robot is called Boston Dynamics robot. And it has one of those chips that all these engineers are working on. And the chip, it tells the robot like a brain in the human body, right? So all the actions that you will see, all the movements that you will see is all coordinated by this chip. So I hope you all enjoy this video.
You broke my heart because I couldn't dance. You didn't even